Right, well here we are in the back garden in Balbriggan, home, and growing vegetables. This is a major part of my life because it gives me very healthy, very fresh, very tasty food, and I also feel I'm doing something for the environment as well, because I'm not using a lot of oil, for example, or bringing it a long distance. And if we just go down and take a look at the centre of it, is really based on 4 different beds, and we rotate them as the year goes around. So if you just come down this way, you see the 4 beds here, and these are all exactly the size of 2 normal doors in a house. I know that because that's what I got out of the skip when I was laying out the garden. And it gives me a system where I'm growing a variety of food. I know, for example, this year coming up now, I've started before Christmas planting onions, which are coming up in the spring, with garlic, which will be coming up shortly. I'll have my leeks there. They were over on that side last year. They're going to be here. All my onion family are here. I'm going to have my bean and my pea family here because they were in the other bed last year, so they're moving on. And I'm also going to have my cabbage family over here. My Brussels sprouts, my everlasting cabbage. I'm going to transplant that over with cuttings. And I'm going to have my beet. I love beetroot. I love leaf beet or spinach, I think. Quite often people think of it as, because it tastes like spinach. And that's going to be my beet bed here. And why do I do that? Well, it's very simple. Because each of these types of food needs different fertility, different ingredients in nutrition from the soil. So by rotating it, I'm not, if you like, starving the soil with that particular vegetable year after year after year. So it gets a chance to have a little rest. I add my compost in, and it grows better that way. Well, I'd be out in this garden most days, not just looking at the plants or picking food for dinner, but also getting my compost to the compost tumbler, and one way or the other, of course, it's sometimes very wet, so the footpath is a very important part of the garden planning. And as I mentioned, when setting out the plots, they're about the size of 2 doors, but really you can measure that inside with a tape measure if you don't have doors. But it meant that I had space between these plots, and I had to decide what was I going to do for paths. So in my case, I decided, listen, I may as well just be done with it and put down concrete paths, and that meant in the wet weather I could still come out without any problem. But you don't need concrete. You could obviously also just put down carpet, maybe with bark on top of it, or even cardboard. Obviously that will rot eventually, but by the time you've walked up and down it a bit, there's not going to be too many weeds growing on it anyway. So it doesn't have to be a problem. You can also, of course, get railway sleepers or wooden planks or old wood and make a border for your plots so that your paths are in between those planks. And one thing is, just make sure it's wide enough for your needs. For example, I have a wheelbarrow, and I make sure that the wheelbarrow can fit anywhere on the paths, because obviously if it's manure or compost, I'd need to be carrying stuff around, or seaweed, if I'm not too far from the coast from time to time, I'd use in the garden as well. And I'll just say that this is going to be a garden that you're going to hopefully become quite familiar with, because over the next while the planting of next year's crops will mean not just these vegetable patches will get used, but we'll also take a look at the apples, the pears, plums, pruning, the herb garden. We have black currants, raspberries, there's a patch over here, bay tree, lavender. It doesn't all have to be food, obviously. There's all sorts of fantastic things you can plant in the garden. Quite often they help the vegetables because it gives a bit of diversity, and of course we're encouraging the wildlife with the birds. We've composting, a very important part of vegetable gardening, and then growing things in succession like radishes and salads, things that are quick and will give us a good return, and underneath glass as well, tomatoes. So there's a whole range of interesting challenges, projects, and beautiful tastes to be gained from investing a bit of time in the garden. But it doesn't have to be a lot of time, because some vegetables are really, really easy, and they just want to grow. We just have to give them a chance.